Hey everybody, it's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, and here I go again on your timeline, or not. How you guys holding up? I will be honest with you, I am taking it day by day, sometimes hour by hour. Um, I'm going to get into the title of my video, which is The Little Black Boy That Wanted to Be White. It's a story behind that. And stay with me, we're going to go somewhere with that. But also today is an activist's birthday. I have her shirt on, and her name is Tiffany Dent. So go out there and show her some love. This is the shirt right here. Check that out. And I also just want to share with you all that Crystal Kaiser is out. She is a young girl who was survived and punished, a victim of sex trafficking. She has finally made bond. I'd like for you to go out there and check out her story. And the reason why is because I've had a lot of black men specifically come into my inbox and ask me about what they can do about sex trafficking. And because they have daughters and they're scared for their daughters and they're concerned. So I think it's important to understand that we are raising young, powerful girls to protect themselves and not be in a bubble where we think that it can't happen to us, because my prayers it doesn't, but it's possible, and we want to make sure that as a community we are engaged in things that we can do to prevent that from happening to our young daughters, sisters, nieces, aunts. It goes on. So check out her case. She defended herself as I know my daughter would, because I raised them to do so, and I want to make sure that we understand how we can support. Was also used to support her, and I want her to be able to be free and healed. So check that out. Also, just want to remember Breonna Taylor. Still has a law that's passed in her name, and her family is still seeking justice. So we make sure that we continue to say her name along with Atiana Jefferson, Sandra Bland. Just make sure that these women stay lifted up and that they're a part of the conversation, and that we don't lose sight. So hopefully you guys are have joined in by now. I wanted to kind of start that out, but I'm going to tell you about this story. And my daughter told me about it. So the title of my video is A Little Black Boy That Wanted to Be White. And honestly, y'all, I usually do a lot of research and digging before I start a conversation or a topic. But today, this is really coming straight from the heart. And I thought it was important based on some of the things that I started to see. And so the little boy, my daughter was working at a camp. Both my twins were working at a camp over the summer one year. I think they were like 16. And the camp that they were working in was a church camp in a, community, black community, or what you would consider a low income community. So it's predominantly black. And so they have to, once they get programming, have other send out applications and process it, and you can come to the camp. And so my twins worked there one summer. I encouraged them to do so, and there were quite a few kids who had some behavioral issues, if you will. But I always know, now that I'm older and that I have been in the incarcerated and in the criminal justice system, I kind of got a bigger view of things. And should have taken that to happen, who knows? But here we are. And so typically the kids who have behavioral issues, they don't hatch like that. Okay, they're not born like that. So something takes place within the environment or things that they see. So this little boy was not a native of that school, but he was bounced around to different charter schools. His mother, she had two boys, and one was a little bit older and one was the youngest. And I remember my daughter, who's very compassionate and empathetic like her mother, she that's really not a tout to me. It's a balance, trust me. But she took him under her wing, because she's a lot like me. I hate to see people being mistreated. I hate to see I'm for the underdog. That's just who I am. So she took a liking to this little boy, and he to her as well. So whenever he was, in trouble or he had issues with his behavior, she would kind of come in and encourage him and talk to him and different things. And so over a period of time, he was frustrated, and he also made a comment to my daughter. Y'all, I'm trying to see these comments because honestly I can't, but just in case you do, I'll see it. But over a period of time, he said to her he wished that he was white. This is what she said to her. This is a little black boy, a little African American boy, that said to my daughter, out of his frustration of repeatedly being, told about his behavior, or in some instance of him getting in trouble, he said to her, "I wish I was white." And I remember her saying to me, why would he want to be white? Like, where does that come from? And then she couldn't understand it. And as an adult, I'm here to say that I don't agree with that, but I understood from his young mind what he was trying to communicate. And this goes into, what we pour into our children, what environments they're in, what type of exposure that they get to education and opportunities, because I think that made a huge difference in my life. And so what I explained to her is, in his young mind, based on everything that he's seeing from a media standpoint and from just a visual standpoint, as well as maybe where he went to school and maybe how he was treated, and the difference that he sees on TV and the difference that he sees in the quality of life, and maybe even what he perceived as privilege for the people that he saw that was white. In his mind, he associated a easier life, a better quality of life, being in a position where he didn't have to feel what he felt if he in fact was white. And that really, bothered her. And honestly, it bothered me as well. And I know that unfortunately there is a system of oppression that we are very clear about at this point, if not Google it, because I'm not going into that today. But it happens, and the idea is to continue to kind of penetrate self-hate, or to proliferate self-hatred. And for my upbringing, it was important that my mom showed us what it was like. There was pride in who we were, and pride in what we looked like, and pride in wanting to be this skin, and those type of things. And that was what she did. She also exposed us to people who didn't look like us in environments where a lot of the time we were the only blacks. Ask my brother and my sister. And it wasn't a problem until, let me say this, it wasn't a challenge until I got down south. When I was on the base, it was very insulated because of the mix of races and the camaraderie that is on the base. Not to say that it does not exist. I'm just saying that for us, it did not ever come into mind that we were different outside of, and we were different. But let me say this, it wasn't that we were not equal. Let's say that. So I saw that difference once I got down south. And so you can imagine, and that was, I don't know, maybe 30 something years ago. And so for a child, about 4 years ago, to say this to my daughter, these are the things that I had to explain to her, because in her mind, she doesn't see it a problem. As a matter of fact, it's pride that comes with being black. So I really wanted to kind of touch on, that topic, because I think it's important about what imagery our children see, what we talk about in the midst of our kids, how we talk about one another, how we feel about ourselves, which has a lot to do with how we discuss other people. And it said it ended. It says my live video ended. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with my internet, so maybe that's what it is, but I'm going to keep on rolling. And so what I'm trying to say to you at this particular point is that these are things that I think it's important for us to break down to our kids so they can have an understanding of things. And when I've seen a lot of commentary about, thank you, Andre, about crime, and specifically the term black on black crime. And honestly, I'm not even here to address that because I think there's enough information out there that talks about where that comes from, talks about the intent on it. And I don't ever want to negate anybody's feelings about crime, because what I do know about crime is a very human part of our existence. and it isn't relegated to skin color or anything like that. However, I do believe that it is a lot of people who've experienced it, even in my family, and it had a lot to do with the people that we know within our area, or some to that degree. And so, what I want to say to those people who, have a very valid question about crime within our own communities is to really look at how we project what we can do. And what I mean by that is, hey, Pauline, what I mean by that is, if in fact and most of us do know, that there's an issue with crime wherever your respective places is, and if it's something that you're actually passionate about, or something that you want to see protested about or some changes made, then I say to you, it starts with you. And this is not to put it off on you, because I have just as much of responsibility myself. But let me explain what I'm saying. So if in fact you would like to get into a program, or get into work, or perhaps facilitate or have somebody come into your church, your school, your community center, or if you would like to see City Council designate more money to, say, for instance, a violence intervention program, that stuff starts with us. So if I'm a person who's questioning about black on black crime, then I need to do the work to talk about or find out about programs, groups, individuals whose work is involved in crime intervention, gun violence, or the like. And the reason why that is important is because once we know better about what it is and who's doing what, we can then share that information. Because it does none of us any good to talk about it and say it in context of, we have this movement going on, and this should always be an ongoing movement, and it should. But just like this movement and the idea of black on black crime, there's a whole infrastructure in place that keeps that going. And so, even though one is getting more attention per se on a national level, it doesn't mean that there's not people within your community that are close to you, maybe even a phone call or a 7 degree of separation away, that can say, hey, you want to donate some money? If you don't have money to donate, you want to donate some supplies, some clothes. I've done that. If you don't have that, you have time, come volunteer and mentor. And our next event is X, Y, and Z. Because it's happening, y'all. The problem is that anything that is remotely close to being positive, to actually work through and create an effective change that will better people, is definitely not going to get publicized. And so that's what we are responsible for, saying, yeah, I have an issue with the crime within my community, but this person is doing this and I want to share it. So this is my response to black on black crime. I say, go join this group, go vote here, or whatever it may look like to you. Go and figure out what's going on with the next budget in the city council, and why they won't give it to a program, and why they won't give it to your actual community. These are opportunities for us to do something about that, as well as mentor, as well as provide some type of resources to a group that's already doing it, because there is somebody doing it. I wouldn't necessarily suggest, unless you absolutely have a fundamental difference in the mission, to create your own, only because we're stronger united, and there's no need to recreate the wheel. So that's just my suggestion to you, if that's something that you'd like to be interested in, because I think it's harmful and a disservice to put that term out there with that ideology, and furthermore, not to bring forth the work that some people are doing already and are not being recognized, and therefore not getting the support that they need to zero in on your issue and something you feel strongly about, which is crime within your own communities. And so I'm not saying you don't have a right to feel what you feel. I'm just saying that there's ways to go about making sure we can do something better with it. And I'll go back to my example. So if this was this boy's perception, his perception was that, because that was his reality. And I could tell you, as we got to know a little bit more about him, his mother was really struggling trying to make sure she took care of both of them. He had a social worker that came to the school to see about him. He wasn't much of an issue with learning as much as it was just, his anxiety and him being at that age. When asked where his father was, he said he was in prison. And so his mother, who also has health issues at that time with high blood pressure, she was trying to keep a job. She couldn't get off work to go and see about him. So this is something that was ongoing for him. And so in his mind, based on the experiences that he had and his perception of his current reality, he was like, you know what, from everything I can see, it sure would be better to be white. And that's something we can do something about, especially my age. And so I just tell you about some of the things I do. I've just mentioned to you some things that you can do. I also want to, and like I said, nobody asked me to do these things or promote anybody. I just do it based off of things that I've learned from, and I'm going to share it because there's nothing wrong with just sharing some knowledge. So, there's a book that I read because I already saw it. I understood it when I was in jail, but it was last Gastric died. What is black on black crime? I don't know. I just consider it to be crime. This term that some people use. I'm not one of them who's a proponent of that, and I just explain why that's the case. But this particular book is called Distracted and Defeated. I don't know if you can see this. And the author is Mike Bangu. And he talks about helping you understand how there's a system that's created to keep people distracted and therefore defeated. And so it's just it's a cycle. It's a rigmarole. And I think on some level, some of us know it, but it's a whole nother thing to have somebody put it into a context that makes it be like, and then you could share that knowledge with somebody else or put somebody else onto that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You could do a book club on that if you want. But this is just some of the material that I try to expose myself to so that I can just understand. And not everything I read or, hear I necessarily can buy into, but I'm certainly willing to learn and see it from a different perspective and then see if I can be a part of the solution. One of the things I think is completely unproductive is just to bitch and complain about a lot of things that's going on and not have some type of solution, or better yet, not be willing to promote some level of solidarity that is taking place but doesn't necessarily get the coverage. So that's just kind of how I feel about that. It looks like I don't know if that's my daddy on or not, but if it is, hey, Papa Ruski. Jonathan Simone, hello, I'm great. I'm hanging in there. Hope you're doing the same thing. So that's 19 minutes of me just telling you about that. And another thing I want us to consider is this, because this is on the topic of, how it relates to communities where I live in and people that look like me. And I started with that story simply because this was a young African-American boy, it was a young black boy. And he was, I don't remember what his age was, but this is where he was at this point. And so I know oftentimes it's easier to kind of look at an individual, and not like the collective. And I'm all about the collective as best as I can be. So, and when I say as best as I can be, what I'm saying is that I would most likely support the work of people doing what I believe is in an effort to progress our collective, growth and economics, regardless of whether or not I like that person. And I think that's something we'll have to mature beyond. You're not going to like everybody that's promoting it. And you have a decision on whether or not you want to support it or not. And if from a fundamental standpoint, it's good for a good percentage of it, you have the choice on the saying, you know what, I may not like having a difference towards you one way or the other, but collectively I see that I can support you in doing good work that is promoting growth and sufficiency and liberation for our communities. So I'll leave that as that. Let's see here. Yes, that's Pops. That's Pops Jordan Gigi. Thank you, James. You like my hair? I've struggled with it. This is hard. I just put it up in the bun at the last minute, so thank you. I like to hear what you guys have to say about this. Is important because we're talking about the youth. We're talking about like we ain't gonna live forever. There is a very strong systematic institutional presence of oppression that is really deep, and they're dying out, and they're trying their best to hang on. And I laugh not because it's funny. I laugh to keep from crying. This is extremely sad. And one of the things that I believe that they've done very well is somehow led us to believe that we don't have the power to for that power to be with the people. I'm very much about that. I'm not sure how that would look to you all, but there's a lot of information out there that can help you. But I just know that the power is with the people collectively, and unity is definitely a hell of a way to, combat that power struggle that takes place. I think that that's something we are definitely to have a conversation about, amongst many other conversations that we need to have about in our communities. But one of the things that is important for me is I care deeply about my people. I'm very much about human general. I just think people should just, from a human perspective, be respected on the fact that in the image of a creator greater than mine, I like to call him God, created you and you got a life. And so on that level, I can respect you. And here's the thing, I have found people that I don't necessarily respect, but I don't make it a habit of being in their presence to disrespect them. I just leave their presence. And guess what? In life, you're going to have people that you don't necessarily click with well. You may not even like them, and that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't mean I have to be, in disharmony with you, or definitely don't have to disrespect you. So at some point, hopefully we can figure that one out. I don't know, but pray about it, whatever your journey is. Thank you, Jonathan. So this is pretty much it. I don't want to spend 30 minutes if I don't have to filling in space. I think it's really important that we seek out some of the intervention programs of violence that we have within our community. And if you have the time and the energy and the money, make sure you contribute to those. And then in between sending our fight videos, which I would suggest you don't do it, have some balance and send some stuff that's actually going to proliferate something good. And because I'm not here to hold you in contempt or condemn you for that. That's just free speech and free will. But I just suggest maybe we have a balance. And some of that stuff is funny. I get it. But just in balance, make sure that there's a collective push to help notify us of things that are taking place that most people wouldn't know. I think I seen something on Chicago. No, not Chicago. It was Milwaukee. Excuse me. It was Milwaukee, where pretty much the community jumped in to basically take care of what looked like a sex trafficking ring. And the community got involved after contacting the local law enforcement. And that story is being completely reported opposite of actually what's taking place. And what I loved about it was that the people was like, hey, if you all aren't going to do anything, we're going to make sure we do something, because we were talking about our young kids. We're talking about 14 and 15-year-old and even younger being taken, and they were away, and the community got in and got involved, and they did something. So I think that was pretty unique and something that needs to make sure that it's told in a way that isn't taking the truth out of context, but really looking at people pulled together and they said, hey, as a community, we don't like what's going on. We're going to do something about it. So maybe I'll share that story. I think I'll share the link to it, because it was Ashley Yates actually sent it. I seen the information about it before, but I noticed it didn't make it to the mainstream media. And then the way it was reported was, just shady, and not really highlighting that in effort to police their own self. It wasn't a vigilante act, but it was very much like, hey, we got something going on. Your kids is my kids. Let's do something about it. And I think that was pretty dope. So, Andre Cooper says, I don't think we support enough with different causes. It doesn't always mean money, but time is important and volunteering. Yeah, I just mentioned that. And let me say this. There's so much to care about. It could be exhausting. Like, listen, I love being black, but it's a whole lot of damn work. It's a lot. It's a whole lot of stuff to care about. What I say to you is, I think, there's a way for your internal being to figure out what it is that you actually want to support. And I think it's not that you don't care about other things, and I think people need to be clear about that, because we're in a movement where we're saying, hey, we want police brutality to stop and different things. We want defunding of unnecessary funding to the law enforcement agencies and things like that. Doesn't mean I don't care about a victim of sex trafficking. It doesn't mean that I don't care about Ahmaud Arbery. It doesn't mean that I don't care about Vernell Bean, that's a local. I do care, but I have the choice and the power to be able to decide, at what point, how do I want to focus that energy. And otherwise, it can be extremely overwhelming. And I guess that's something you're going to have to, figure out with yourself. But I like the bigger things, but there's some things I focus on from a perspective of just kind of getting information out there, because I just like to amplify it just in case you don't know. So one of those things was the book I mentioned. I'll put the link to that below. Also, I'm going to tell you about a book that turned the light on for me in terms of law enforcement. It's called Breaking Rank. This guy is somewhere hiding, and nobody can find him because he just it's an expose, and his name is Norm Stamper. It says a top cops expose of the dark side of American policing. This was helpful in terms of putting things into context. So what I mean by that is this isn't here to say, hey, jump on the police. That ain't even the type of vibe I got going on. But I do want to put things into context so I help understand, because it's just a culture. It's a long-lived culture, and that's just how that is. And so here we are. And, I would always say, if you ever feel some kind of way about that kind of statement or those type of books, and kind of question where you're coming from, and then go from there. And then that's a personal choice of y'all. So you have the right. It's up to you. But that's that. Thank you, Daddy. My daddy said he's proud of me, y'all. Hey, thanks, Dad. It's Papa Ruski. So that's all I got for 28 minutes. I hope this is useful at some point. Just think about that. It's important that we wrap our arms around the youth. Right now, they're doing incredible work in terms of protesting and leading and organizing. I think it's important that if we can support them, that we absolutely do. It's easy to be an innocent bystander of, let me throw my opinions in here or there, but my whole thing is, you can do that, but you can also contribute. So maybe just support them in the efforts or efforts that you feel like you would like to support, that is all collectively about the advancement and liberation of people, specifically Black communities. So I don't really have a lot of questions on that. I don't know. It's raining tonight. Y'all probably ain't no sports on. What you doing? What you watching? Ain't no sports on. I'm just playing. Y'all have a good Wednesday. Peace out.